afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another BCS Women's Taster Sessions, and in helping people to return to work or to actually upskill the over 50s, and also looking at early careers people. In this session, we have joined with the Business Change Specialist Group, and we have Maria Flores with us. Maria is a Business Change Specialist Committee member, committee secretary actually. She's got an extensive cross-sector experience in varied roles across the software development lifecycle in information technology, data and business change, bridging these different parts of the organizations. So legal, IT, business information security. Maria has a degree in law, an MBA, and the BCS International Diploma in Business Analysis, and is also a Fellow of Information Privacy. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Maria and hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this session, where I'm going to be giving my impressions about change, about the experience I had in over 20 years of working in different sectors like hospitality, wholesale, gaming, public sector, charity sector, media, fintechs, events, but mostly information technology, and how these organizations were going through change, how this change was done to us, and also how change in our lives, our personal change, can also impact our lives. So I hope this session is interesting. And starting with Heraclitus, the only constant in life is change. And if anybody has any doubt about that, just look back at the last 2 years. It was all about change. And this is just the beginning. So what I'm going to be talking about today is, we talk about change, but what is change? Why change? The larger chunk is going to be about tools and concepts, cases I've been going through in my working life, even if I'm going to be talking about them also when I'm talking about tools and concepts. Then I'm going to be talking about you. And finally, Q&A. If you have any questions in the meantime, please put them in the chat, and then I will be answering them. So starting with the first one, was change. Just looking at the news lately. So new ways of working, hybrid return to the workplace. Before we were going to the office, now we are working from home. This changes how we are connected to the office. This changes how security, how employee monitoring, how the things are done. New processes related to COVID. There were new legislation from the government that was putting a cap in the amount of people that could be attending football matches. So in order to avoid going through this new process, another process was created by Carlisle United and Lincoln City Cap to ground the capacity to avoid this COVID passport requirement, so everybody would be able to access without any kind of COVID passport. Mergers. So this is about Brighton and Hove and West Sussex Hospital merging. This means that these organizations, they're going to be ceasing to exist on its own. They're going to be all merged together. And then how it's going to be working internally, which department is going to be leading? Is HR going to be merging? Are they going to be still having their own HR departments? How about the front workers people? The branding, how are they going to be called? Acquisitions. And this is a quite big one lately. We see the large organizations tend to acquire small organizations. The example we have in here is Amazon trying to build a portfolio of knowledge and very much data that you'll be getting from other organizations. Another example of that is Google. Or just new IT systems, changing from using the whole Microsoft suite into Google means that there is a massive change on how everything is done. So now that we know that bots change, why? So now I'm going to be asking you to use your imagination and think of every organization that you know has wheels. This would be the corner shop. This is a supermarket where you are buying food. This is the coffee shop where you are getting coffee if you are going to a physical office. Your GP, Amazon, Microsoft, everything that is online. And they are all different vehicles because they are different organizations. And they are running in a massive motorway. So they're going to be massive lorries. And these are going to be the Amazons, they're going to be Googles, these are going to be very large organizations. And everybody sees when a lorry is going in the motorway. But we also have bicycles, we have skateboards, and these are going to be small organizations that they're going to be going on their own speed. But they are all going through the same motorway, which is the way that we operate. This is the business world, and everybody can see each other. When we are on the motorway, we can see the big lorries, we can see the motorbikes. In this one, we can see bicycles as well, and everybody's going at his own pace. And sometimes there are organizations that no longer make it and cease to exist. And they are on the side of the motorway because they can no longer make it. An interesting feature of this motorway is that it has a thick fog. And this is our environment. This is where we are going. So we are all operating in the business arena, but we don't know what the future is going to be. And part of this fog in 2019 and 2020 at the beginning, that was COVID. Who could have predicted that? So many organizations specialize in trying to understand what is going to be happening so they can prepare and they can have a better competitive advantage over other organizations that may not be looking into that. Other organizations, they're looking inside and they are looking into how we can predict all this. I'm gonna go back to this later. Now, how to change. So we know the what and we know the why, and it's to keep on operating, is to survive sometimes, to thrive, and now how. And this is going to be a number of tools and concepts. And this is going to be introducing also something that is important if you are interested in change. You need to be a mechanic because you're going to be using tools and frameworks. And you need to be a magician because you will never know everything. And tools, they are just a reduction of reality and is the best thing we can work on. As George E.P. Box said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And this is very useful in change. So not all changes are equal. And I'm going to start with Venkatraman's business transformation model. And this model proposes that the more the organization changes, the more opportunity to growth there is. So starting from localized exploitation, and I'm going to use an example of a call center where I used to work many years ago. So in a call center, we decide to use a new system to log the calls from the clients. It's just going to be localized exploitation. It's not affecting nobody else. It's not affecting customers. It's just how the customer service is doing things. However, if the same login system is going to be used by technical support, then we have an internal integration because it's going to be customer support and technical support using the same system. These are the evolutionary levels. Moving into revolutionary levels is if we, because we are using this new system, we have a new process. That means that we don't have to let know technical support, that we are opening tickets for them. They can see the notifications from their own system. So we have already changed the process we were using before. Business network redesign means that we're going to be outside of what is the organization. So customers, they would be able to open a ticket online. So it goes beyond what is just the organization. Or the suppliers, they can access our portal via an API. And the latest of these revolutionary levels is business scope redefinition. And in this level is when the whole organization changes. And I have two examples of this. And the first example is Netflix. Netflix has been an example of revolutionary change because they started as subscription, and probably is the only thing they still keep is the subscription for people who would like to have films delivered. However, in 2007, they launched a streaming media service because they realized that the world was changing and streaming services were starting to work, and they could use this subscription instead of sending physical DVDs into just streaming. And then they changed again their scope when they decided to become a studio, and they wouldn't be buying or commissioning any kind of or some of the films or the series that they are showing, but they would be creating it themselves. And a second example of this is Santander. And Santander by 1999 had merged with another Spanish bank, and it was called BCSCH. And under that name, announced the acquisition of Binational. Then changed to Banco Santander. But under Binational UK, they bought Allianz and Leicester and Bradford and Bingley, which were quite operating in a very different way from Santander. They were quite regional. Santander by then had acquired Binational with BCSH, had already gone into another market, and it had to change radically the way these other organizations worked, and they were all branded under Santander. So now moving into more tools. The business change life cycle. And in a way, we are going to go back to the motorway I was before. So these vehicles, they are special vehicles because they have more people than a normal vehicle in a motorway would have. So it has employees, it has different departments. And at some point, they see that they have to change something. They have to start with a business case. And this business case, it has to indicate there's going to be a benefit. It could be reduction of cost. Let's say, for example, outsourcing of technical support. And in order to carry out this business case, first, it has to be aligned first with the internal environment. The internal environment is how it's structured, how the organization is structured. And I will go back to that. This is one of these frameworks that is interrelated with other frameworks, but also with the external environment. And the external environment is that motorway we are moving. And this means the other vehicles that they are running, because maybe we see our competition has decided to outsource technical support. So maybe it's a competitive advantage if we also do it. But the other part of the external environment that we have to look into is the fog, because we don't know what's in there. but I will go into this fog later. And part of this business change life cycle means that the business case, we have to define what we want, design it, implement it. And a very important thing that sometimes gets forgotten is to check that we actually have intended to do what we originally wanted. And this is something I'm going to go back later to as well. So to understand more of what is ahead of us, there is a model that is called PESTLE. And this is looking into the political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental we are living in. So some of the political, sometimes it's volatile, things can change quite quickly, or also because of certain political reasons, maybe things cannot be done. In the case of outsourcing technical support to another country, we would have to check that this country has political stability, also economical, that it doesn't have an inflation that is going to be very difficult for us to keep the exchange rates. And social, this is going to be accepted, that when we have customers calling, they're going to be happy seeing or hearing that technical support has been outsourced. Technological is quite important as well, because it's how far we can go. What is the technology allow us to do? And in these 2 years of pandemic, we have noticed how far technology can help us if we really put effort into it. Legal, and this is the part where I'm working now in data protection. So anything that is related to regulations, regulations of any kind, that they can affect us. It could be sectorial, that they are affecting certain areas like telecommunications or financial. And finally, environmental. And environmental in a way is also related to social, because there is a great acknowledgement of how organizations can impact the environment when they are working on it, and how this is affecting our operations. If this wasn't complicated enough, we live in a VUCA world, which means that everything is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And this was a term that it was coined in the 80s. That's nearly 40 years. And already at that time, it would be foreseen that the speed of change, the complexity of change, it would be much greater. And a part that I particularly like is complexity, because complexity means that change that is in one side, maybe of the world or the organization, can impact something else in other part of the world. And it's like a ripple effect, change on change on change on change. And examples we have with COVID-19, because we have the pandemic, we couldn't travel. Because we couldn't travel, we stayed in the UK. Because we stayed in the UK, there was a flourishing of national traveling. Because there was a flourishing of national traveling, prices increased exponentially. And maybe some of the places where they were renting in some of the coastal places around the UK went really, really expensive. Who could have predicted that? I would like to talk about Agile Change. It's very useful when we are talking about software. And I've worked in Agile environments. How this affects change. If we are new to an organization, we may not know how this organization is. We just see part of it. And we have to start somewhere. And I really like this example because it's not going to be working for everything, but we have to start somewhere. And it's these small wins that we can get that can help us. If we are planning a rocket to Mars, Agile is not going to work. It is normally with civil engineering, massive works, that wouldn't be the best way. But software, people, Agile Change, definitely. So now we are going into the organization. So going back to this motorway we were before, and we have these different vehicles. Each one of them has its own blueprint. And the equivalent of this blueprint in the business world is the POPIC model. And I have worked with this very, very often. Normally people is on one side, but I put it in the middle, and I think there is an agreement now that people should be really at the center of this. And this is what is representing the organization. If we go back to the business cycle, the business change life cycle, you could see that we have to align the organization externally and internally. This is the internally. So it has to be making sense with how the organization currently works. So the organization is going to be structured in a certain way. It's going to have information and technology, processes, and people, and everything has to flow. If there is any change that is just touching information and technology, let's say a new system, a new IT system, it's not going to work if processes don't change, if people don't get trained, and if there is an organizational acknowledgement of that. And I will go back to this later on. So the second one is people. People is very important. Going back to very much the origins, the academic origins of change, back in the 90s, John Cotter, who is an emeritus professor at Harvard, he wrote an article about how transformations, organizational transformations, fail. And afterwards, he wrote a book in 1996 called Leading Change, and it was about penguins in the Arctic. And he made an example out of that. And I'm gonna bring the example of the penguins to data protection, which is the area where I'm now. So the first thing in this 8 steps process is to create a sense of urgency. So for the penguins is that the Arctic is melting. For us is we have a new regulation and we have to comply to this regulation. The second step is to build a guiding coalition. So we know something has to be done. So now we need people who are going to be leading that, people who are going to be leading. They want to lead this change, and they're going to be forming a strategic vision. And this is very important. If there is not a clear way where we are going, this is going to fail, because this is what we are going to be selling. We are selling where we are going. And this where we are going has to be better than is now. Because this is going to be helping us enlist a volunteer army. These are the champions. In data protection, we had the privacy champions who understood that actually data protection is about people, is about the digital side of ourselves. And therefore, by protecting personal data, we are protecting ourselves first as employees and afterwards as customers. It's also quite important that barriers are removed, because if we just leave it the way it is, change is not going to be happening. We saw in the previous model, it has to be across the whole organization. We have to be touching processes. We have to be touching information and technology. If we don't allow failure, if there is no psychological safety, it's not going to be possible. And going back to the elephant from before, we need to have these short-term wins. that they're going to be building this momentum, sustain acceleration, and then we're going to be able to institute change. And then we go round circle again. Complexities that we may have in organizations with people is that not organizations are equal. So organizations that they are based in power, they were going to be relying on the person in power starting it. Task cultures, they're more similar to the ones that they are more current now, teams, working in teams. And maybe teams, they're going to be having it easier because they are blending in a team already, and they could be the team of people who are moving this change around. Role cultures, they may have it trickier because these are the specialists, and maybe it's more difficult to work with a specialist to tell them we are going to be working a different way. And person culture is the other cultures, they are not that common. They will be the freelancers, consultants, maybe there are these people who are in a certain organization. You also need to get to them in a different way because they are somehow disconnected from the organization. There is not the same cohesion that you would have with other of the different types. And if you're going to take something from this presentation and you're not familiar to change, please take the SARA model. Because if somebody is going to put a small screenshot of what is change, it's going to be this. This is based on the 5 stages of grieving by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross from the last century. It's not exactly as how Elizabeth put it. It's supposed to be 5 emotions. I'm not sure acceptance is an emotion as such. It definitely helps on how to deal with the emotions, with the strong emotions that people are going to have, because change is going to be affecting people in a different way. So for the organization, outsourcing technical support may make fantastic sense. However, for the technicians who are going to be out of work, that's not going to be good news. And part of change is dealing with that, is how people are going to be reacting to that. So the first stage is shock. The second one is anger, then rejection. In rejection, what normally is advised is empathize. Because if somebody is going to be losing the job, that's a difficult one. And organizations have to have things in place for that. And when I've been in situations like this, organizations tend to have agreements with external counseling that is going to be helping with training and giving advice. And it can be quite helpful. And then there is acceptance and finally hope. As I mentioned, the original grieving model, this is for somebody, is about dealing with death, actually. This may not be the same speed for everybody. People can be going back and forth. It's not that linear. So this is where the models, they are helpful. And when I've been in situations where there was reorganization and people were in this possibility of losing the job and having to retrain, is very good, not just if you're going to be in the part that's going to be administering change somehow, but if you're going to be going through change, because you would be going through different stages, but also the people you are working with are going to go through these changes, and having lived that, and you may have lived that as well, is quite hard. I really like the take Melanie Franklin in neuroscience. It gives more answers to how we are dealing with the emotions of people and with the threats that we are feeling when there is change, because this change comes from somewhere else. It's not that we decide to change. This change comes from somewhere else. Which are the threats? Loss of autonomy. So what can we do about this? So suggestions for this is to give options and to ask questions, to involve people. Loss of certainty. So is this ability to predict the future? How can we know what is going to be the vision for the organization, but how about me? How about my role? So for this is to involve people in decisions, over communicate, to set clear expectations, and loss of status. Maybe the new change changes me from being a manager to be part of a team. We want to involve people and to provide opportunities for learning and development. So now I'm gonna go with details and also bring in some more models in here. So I was working in a call center, and this is not the real model flowchart, because this was 15 years ago. So that was a long time ago, but it's an example of another model that we would use in reprocessing. So I was in an organization that was acquired. So my organization was going to cease to exist. So everything we have, knowledge, departments, people, we were all absorbed into the new organization. We still had products that they were around, we had hardware, and we didn't want the customers to notice there was going to be a change. The change was going to be for us, but it wasn't going to be for our customers. So whenever a customer was going to ask for a replacement, we have to have a way to make it go through a system that it wasn't ours anymore, but it had to recognize the old products in a way that it would go to a central team in the new organization, that it would recognize that it was from my organization, and then redistributing it to the right areas. And for this, we use swim lanes. So it's how we remap processes, and we would have the different departments on the left-hand side and what everybody had to do. And the second example is in data protection. This is my day job now. There are a lot of models in business change, but there are also models for anything we would be doing in the organization. So I'm going to pick an example of the model that we would have in data protection, which is compliance with rights. And I'm going to go just for the right that every individual, everybody in this call, has to go to any organization and ask them if they are processing your data and ask for a copy of that data. Many organizations before 2018, they wouldn't have thought about it. Maybe public service, certain organizations that they are very regulated would have it, but it wasn't a commonplace. So we would have to get that into this model I mentioned before. This is the organization. So how are we going to be compliant with rights? How are we going to be ensuring that when we get a request from either an employee or from a customer, we are able to provide this for them? So I was talking before about to be. So this vision of the future, we have the vision in here. So the current was, we don't have anything to respond to customers' requests. And we want a system that is going to be responding to customers' requests. So this would mean that first, we would have to be creating something manual. And this is a program transformation model map that is going to be giving us in the different years what we're going to be doing in certain areas. So we didn't have a process. So the process at the beginning would have to be manual. So first, in information and technology, we would have to understand which information we have about customers. And then people would have to know about that. We would have to be training people to recognize what is a request from an individual. And maybe some changes in the organization would have to be done. How these requests are going to be dealing with. Is it going to be customer support? Is it going to be legal team? Is it going to be another team? So that would be what it would be doing initially. But then what we would want to do is to automate that. We would like to have a way in which this process is automated. If we know certain data is in certain systems, the next step is that it's going to be automated. This means that the process is going to change again, because we are not going to be looking into something that is manual, but is automated. And then people would have to be trained on that system. And maybe this changes things in the organization. Maybe it's not going through customer support. Maybe what we have is a portal within our external website that is saying, I want my information. Or maybe there is a self-service. But maybe the next step that we have is that we are going to be building new products, new products for customers. And then we have to embed all this. We have to make it, we have to embed it in the design. It's going to be called privacy by design and default. So for the new products, we want to have a way to make it automated from the beginning. So whenever a customer is going to be asking for the data, it's going to be really automated. And this again is affecting how information technology and how people are going to be responding to that. And then a further step is that in order to ensure that then all the new products and services are going to be having this embedded privacy by design, is going to be part of any project that we have. So PMO is going to be having some sort of acknowledgement or sign off that is going to be including privacy. And then again, it's going to be affecting people needs to be trained on that. Maybe there are changes in the organization because we need people who know privacy within the project management office. And then information and technology may change because of that, because we have added a new step. So now I have added all this information. I'm going to bring it back to you. So as a recap, you need to be a mechanic, a magician, to rely on models of reality that sometimes they are not exactly models of reality, using the models that they are going to be useful for that particular situation, taking into account also that sometimes the changes, they are very little, and sometimes changes are radical. It is very useful if you are a big picture person, because everything is going to be related. And a little change on one side of the organization may change another part of the organization. Another thing that I suggest is network and mentor. Network, come to our events because you're going to be learning a lot about organizations and organizational change. And mentoring. We have a mentoring scheme at the BCS, and you all have gone through change. So that would be helping you reframing your skills. And the last thing is that absolutely everybody is going to go through change. So to recap, I have talked about what's change, nearly everything. Why change? To survive and thrive, and it's going to be faster and faster. The tools and concepts of business change, couple of examples of I've been going through change, talking about you, and now leaving it to you for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Maria. It's I love the motorway metaphor that you used, and you gave everyone a really good overview of the sort of tools and things that people could use. So thank you very much for that. But I have one question for you, maybe to kickstart and encourage others to also ask questions. Is really two. One is, how did you get into change? And second, what do you think are the skills that you need? Because we've probably got some people on the call who are thinking about moving into change. And so by knowing how you got there and the skills that you use, it's looking what transferable skills do you have that enabled you to do this?
There are job titles that they have change in it, and they're definitely change, but there are others they don't have it. So the fact that there is not, the job title doesn't include business change, my one doesn't mean it's not. As skills is definitely the big picture. So it helps somebody who likes working with uncertainty and with big pictures. Maybe people who are very specialized, they're gonna struggle and do need to open up. And this tends to help with people who are more of a T-shape. So they have a generalist background, and maybe they have a specialized in something. I've seen many project managers. I have more of a business analyst background, but it helps being involved in projects that they're gonna be touching people. So not exclusively projects that they are IT projects, because IT projects many times don't touch people. And I think that's the big difference between business change and what is project management.
Okay, thank you. Paul, I noticed you've posted something in the chat. Do you want to
well, hello, Andrea, and thanks for that, Maria. It's very informative.
Thank you.
You've obviously done a lot of work on it. I just got like a general kind of comment, really. It's just that I'm essentially concerned that our current sort of approach to digital transformation is very high risk, and it's very, very high cost. And I think that is impeding the decision making for executives to invest in change. And I was saying there, particularly change that puts purpose before profit. So I'm concerned that we just are drifting into a stagnation because of that. And I was suggesting, just for the sake of it really, that perhaps our priority should be a digital system for building effective computer systems. That's a little bit recursive and maybe difficult you might need to think about that a little bit. But essentially what I'm saying is that we may need a systems approach to make the IT department more effective, efficient, and equitable, so that it would ease the CEOs of this world's minds when they come to invest several £100 million in a new computer system. So that's my comment, basically, or what I'm trying to add towards your meeting for change.
It's one of the things that I have noticed is that many of the people in the board don't understand IT and the significance of the IT. And many of these decisions, and I was somehow leaving a bit IT on the side purposely, because change was initially created as a business change, so it's business. So it's on the purpose of the business. So as we are living in a more and more digitalized world, things are shifting. So changes that we are going to be making in any part of the business definitely they're going to be touching IT. So it gets quite tricky, because I don't see that many senior leaders that come from IT. So we have senior leadership that comes from operations, and they're going to be using IT, but they are not IT people, and they're not able to bring that to the board. And I think that this is somehow impeding changes that go in another direction, because it definitely would help with the technological fog. Many times the board is going to be looking just into the fog, and it's going to be asking other people in the board what they're going to be doing. They're going to be looking at other organizations. So it gets tricky, because there's no perfection in there. And obviously, yes, it's the bias that we have to keep us on. And I read in here, purpose before profit. It's a tricky one. I was talking before about hybrid working and organizations that they want employees to go back, and this is investment banking. They won't care. it's a different world. It's a different sector. It's a different way of operating, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's fine. Thanks for the answer.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from anyone? Anyone else want to come off mute to ask Maria a question?
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
Maria, can you sometimes change projects don't go as planned, as in we've delivered what was planned, but it's not been adopted. Can you give us some pointers how you can increase adoption?
John Cotter kept on writing about why projects were not working, why business change wasn't going well. And it tends to be one party's people and another party's vision. And the other part, I would say, is environment. And somehow this means that this change plan is not followed through. And when I was mentioning before, business realization, this is where we understand if we have followed the plan, if we have followed the project, and if the benefit we wanted has been great, and then carrying out if it's not possible. So many times I have seen that projects having been working well because there was an underestimate in the technical side. There was the technical side itself, and then people were not involved. So if there is a decision to have a new system, sometimes it looks at is done to employees, and they may reject it. They have to be doing something on top of what they are doing today. Why would they have to do it? And is this work of communicating the benefit, enlisting people, and having a robust IT project that would help that go through. And I think it was what John Cotter was saying, it was the vision is quite important, because we need to have that. We have seen the SARA model. So this is grieving for people. The ways we were doing, we are going to be doing in a different way. Why? This vision needs to be repeated and repeated and repeated, and it needs to be communicated, and people needs to be involved, because maybe things can be, even if change has to happen, things can be in ways that people in the organization can decide and can make it much easier. to get into. Does this answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, because I'm just on one screen, so I'm not able to go anywhere, but I'll copy it and I'll have a look when I'm on the full screen.
Okay, thank you very much. It was just a contribution, that's all.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Sally.
Any other questions from anyone? If not, then I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you again, Maria. It's a very informative session, and I think people will have learned a lot about the tools and what it takes to move into change. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea.
And that this has been recorded and it will be posted up on the BCS sites later on. So
great work, Maria.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.